Hello, and welcome to the 8th Annual UAGC Early Childhood Education Conference. Today, we have an exciting presenter. It's Dr. Pat Barton from the Arizona Montessori Teacher Education Program, and she's going to be presenting about integrating Montessori principles into non-Montessori spaces. To start, we kindly request your attention for a brief moment in the spirit of transparency and utmost respect for our community. We have some information we would like to have you read on this disclaimer screen. And by taking a few moments to read through the disclaimer, you empower yourself with pertinent information regarding the boundaries of our knowledge sharing environment. Please take a moment to read through this slide as well, and then together we will embark upon some exciting topics in the early childhood education. So I'd love to introduce you to Dr. Barton. Dr. Barton, come on the screen. Welcome. Dr. Barton is the early childhood coordinator and philosophy, science, and mathematics instructor for the Arizona Montessori Teacher Education Program. She has trained Montessorians for over 15 years. She's been a Montessori early childhood guide for 20 years. She currently works as an instructional coach at a public Montessori school in Tempe, Arizona. She has a Montessori AMS early childhood credential, and she has a BSJ with a certificate in integrated arts from Northwestern University. She also has an MA in education from Ottawa University and an MA in informational resources and science, library science from the University of Arizona. And congratulations to Dr. Barton, as she just completed her PhD in Montessori hybrid teacher education at the University of Buffalo. Welcome, Dr. Barton. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some principles of Montessori that may be integrated into non-Montessori spaces. Those spaces might include any place that you are working with young children, school, home, grandparents, maybe a museum. I also realize that some of these concepts may be present in places that you work already. And so this conversation is just from a Montessori lens. I'll be sharing a little bit about Montessori in context and history, the role of the adult in the Montessori classroom, and that will connect with independence and autonomy. Also bringing around the child's sense of order, developing the child's concentration and coordination, and finally, the design of the environment. This is a very broad look at Montessori with some ideas on how to implement or adapt this to the work and life you have with children. On the screen, you'll see a wooden-sized chair, child-sized chair, next to a table with a globe on the shelf. The chair is pulled out a little bit, inviting someone to sit. I included this photo as a transition. I invite you to transition now from the space you are currently in to the Montessori early childhood classroom, to let go of the list of things that you have to get done with the child and to shift to the child view, the child needs, instead of outside expectations. So begin by imagining the child and taking the role yourself as the curious observer. It wouldn't be a Montessori presentation if we didn't include a picture of Maria Montessori herself. That's where we start. On the screen now is a black and white photograph of Maria Montessori in her later years. She's sitting in a chair, watching, observing 6 children working on various activities or works on floor rugs. As a Montessorian, I can see that these are some of the materials that I have in my classroom today. The photo is from Montessori's time in India. I wanted to provide you a little context for Maria's Montessori story to help you see her vision and where her ideas came from. She was born in Italy in 1870 and became one of the first female doctors in that country. One of her first positions was working with institutionalized children. Montessori, a scientist, noticed the children had nothing to engage with or interact with. In fact, the caregivers described the children as just playing with whatever crumbs they could find on the floor. She studied the works of educators and found that children could learn and develop, even those in institutions, first by giving them the opportunity to take care of themselves, their space, by sensory stimulation and activities together. In 1907, she was invited to open a program in the slums of Rome where the landlords asked her to take care of the young children who wandered the building while parents are at work. Remember, this by young children, that was children 2 to 6 who were left alone in an apartment complex during the day. She created a space for them and observed their interactions. She also worked with children from that were orphans from an earthquake in rural Italy at the turn of the century and found that their need for purpose and connection helped the children overcome the trauma they experienced. Over time, her movement spread and she gave lectures and trained teachers, all in the hopes of bringing about a better world through children. During World War II, she found herself in Italy, just before World War II. And then she wound up, as the war began, a citizen of Italy in a British colony, and so she was placed under house arrest. She continued her work observing children now in a different part of the world and adapting her ideas and materials to develop her understanding of education. Once again, her focus was on peace and producing a better world. There are about 5,000 Montessori schools now in the United States, just for a little context. Most of them are early childhood programs, and there are about 100 Montessori programs in 150 countries in the world. So the first principle I want to talk with you about is relationship. I firmly believe that relationship is essential to all learning and life, really. Montessori proposed a vision of the classroom as a triangle: the child, the teacher or adult, and the environment. So on the screen, you see a representation of this triangle where and how they interact. The role of the teacher as the adult is not the center of the learning, the child is. And the role of the adult is to observe the child, what their interests are, what they're engaged in, and what their needs that they are demonstrating through those engagements. And from those observations, the teacher or guide prepares the environment to get it ready so the child can access it independently. So one suggestion for implementing or idea for implementing this is to, aside from having the prepared space for the child, is to get out of the way. That's how I talk to these student teachers I work with. It's not about me as the teacher or guide, it's about the child. So my job is to first step back and watch what's going on. Montessori wrote in The Secret of Childhood, the first aim of the prepared environment is, as far as possible, to render the growing child independent of the adult. So the role of the adult is to get everything ready so it's accessible to the child, to be the model, but then make space. So our next topic is on independence. Children yearn to do things themselves, and of course, it's essential to their development of many skills, including self-esteem. On this slide, you'll see two photographs. On the left, there's a child using a crinkle vegetable cutter. I think she's cutting those rainbow carrots. And on the photo on the right is a child with a banana and orange slice on their plate. They're getting their snack ready. Primary to the Montessori classroom is to design the environment so children can take care of themselves. These two photos are examples of that. The child is preparing their own snack on their own time. Often in Montessori classrooms, the snack is available for 2 children at a time in the morning. The snack's set up on a shelf or a table for the child to serve themselves. Of course, they've had some guidance on that. Sometimes there's a drawing of how many items the child can have, or sometimes there's a sample plate. The child serves themselves with tongs onto the plate, and when they're done, they clean their spot and wash their dishes. And the guide has prepared this environment with the child's independence in mind. So the adult is not telling the children when it's time to eat, but instead laying the foundation for the child to be independent, to take care of themselves and their own needs. Of course, there's other areas for independence. For example, this child-sized pitcher of water and glass to allow the child to pour their own water and drink from a glass. You won't find much plastic glasses in Montessori classrooms. Some classrooms might have a large water jug for them to serve water for this too. This picture is of a preschool classroom picture, but you'll find this in a toddler classroom also. So the toddler can learn to pour their own water and drink from a slightly smaller pitcher, of course, and then drink from a glass or a cup. That allows that child to develop that independence and drink. Do they spill? Yes, of course, but that's how they're going to learn. I want to emphasize that this is the environment is not only set up for the child, but the adult gives them lessons or models the use of those, the complete activity. So I invite you to pause now and consider places that you might have caring for the self built into your child's routines or their class's routines, and if there's a way to better prepare for the child in the environment. So here are some examples that could be found in non-Montessori spaces. On the slide, you'll see a table in front of a mirror, and on top of the table is a box of tissues. So it's pretty simple, inviting the child to look in the mirror as they blow their nose or clean their face. I demonstrate how to use the tissue, how to blow your nose many times, perhaps knowing the child wants to take care of themselves and they want to be independent. Other ways to encourage independence is, of course, having the child get dressed for themselves. Preparing the environment for that might be limiting the child's choices, buying clothes that the child can put on and take off themselves, selecting clothes that a child can put on, including shoes, even the youngest toddler, and giving them that time and space. Getting a snack or food or their own water when needed, even packing their own lunch. That might be by providing for the child limited choices on things to pack or select. And then, of course, washing their own hands and face, providing them step stools or a way to make sure that your faucets children can turn on themselves, get their own soap, even as a young toddler. Another angle or perspective on independence is purposeful work. So children want to be a part of the community, whether that community is your classroom or their family. They want to be a part of it in a way that's authentic. So in a Montessori classroom, you won't find a dramatic play area. Instead, Montessori found that children were more interested in purposeful work. So children can sweep, dust, fold clothes, match socks, set tables, take care of the plants. And on the slide, you see a photograph of a child's hand petting a bunny. Taking care of the animals is another way to be a part of the family or community, to not just be cared for, but to be a caregiver. Of course, appropriate tools are essential in setting up that environment. So child-sized brooms and mops, access to dust cloths, and once again, everything broken down into a series of steps for the child. Wow, that is some laundry. On the screen, you'll see a photo of a laundry basket filled, overflowing, in fact, with towels, placemats, and some other items from from this particular Montessori classroom. The Montessori classrooms often use cloth towels for cleaning and dusting, as well as placemats and cloth napkins. This is an environmental connection, as well as connecting to providing beauty. But after washing, they need to be folded. So folding is definitely something children of all ages can help with. Now, I realize you might not be in a space that has wash to fold, but consider that other ways for children to help in real ways, perhaps setting up nap mats, cots, serving meals to peers, sharpening pencils, and so on. So as a review, design your interactions with children to allow for their independence. And remember, they can often do more than we expect. They seek opportunities to be a part of the community and the family in purposeful ways. Next, we're on the sense of order. Montessori describes something she called sensitive periods, a time when a child is especially attracted or able to learn in a certain way. One of these sensitive periods is from 3 to 6 years old is the sense of order. You've probably seen this when a child is organizing their cars in a line or sorting crayons or even frustrated with a change of routine. These next slides represent a way to appeal to that sense of order by isolating a skill development for a child, providing scaffolding for that child. Remember, all these slides are individual lessons given to a child, and they're shown in a series of steps. They practice this independently. This is the beginning of a sewing sequence with a child from 3 years through kindergarten. Eventually, the child will learn to sew, but more precisely stitch. But we need to break down the complexity. As I describe each slide, consider skills that you can scaffold for the child, isolating the difficulty and appealing to their sense of order and predictability. On this slide is a photograph of a sewing block. The child learns to push in and pull out through the holes and then reverse it so it's ready for the next person. This slide, you probably have something similar in your space, your home or your classroom. They're blue, yellow, green, orange, and red and purple, large wooden beads and a lacing string. This is slightly more complex than the sewing block or the lacing block. The string is smaller, and the beads are not connected. The child needs to keep track of what is attached and what's not, and that their beads stay on. There should be just enough to fit on that lace. In fact, at first, I might not include all these beads on. I might just pick one color or two, and 1 or 2 shapes. Then add more later to increase the complexity and kind of a point of interest for the child. Now we move to a lacing card, and on the screen you'll see a heart-shaped lacing card in a tray, a metal tray that's heart-shaped, and there's a string for lacing and a plastic needle. The child's learned to move in and out as with the block, but once again, this one is even smaller. All the lessons are built on this and their independence. So the child has access to this shelf material, and there's no need for adult support after the child has been shown how to do it. Of course, they might seek support if the lacing gets knotted, for example. They might turn to an adult, but they might also turn to a more knowledgeable peer. So now we have a parallel skill. In order to sew, I need to learn how to cut the thread. On the screen, there's a tray with a small basket with cutting paper alongside a color paper cut into strips and a scissors. Each strip has a pattern of lines to be cut, and the children practice cutting on the line. They may use something similar. They might use the paper later to create something else. And now on the screen, finally, a scissors and the thread. On the white tray is a small container with embroidery thread and a plastic needle along with the scissors. This lesson is threading the needle. That's all. That's the whole purpose of the lesson. The child has learned the concept of lacing and stitching and cutting. Now we have cutting the thread and threading the needle. Finally, on screen, we have a tray with a basket, and in the basket is a metal needle and then some small plastic mesh. In another basket is the scissors along with assorted embroidery thread. From here, the child learns to stitch on the squares And then they might also later make a small pillow, sew a button on a bracelet, etc. So all these are small steps that the child can do independently to build that sense of order. Alongside that, in the sewing might be this knitting fork. On the screen, you'll see a wooden box, and inside it is the knitting fork and yarn. This parallel work built on the physical patterns and muscle memory of the other tasks. So while children may be working on cognitive skills in other areas of the classroom, they're also building their concentration, their fine motor, hand-eye coordination in these materials, all that they can do independently. Finally, this is the very popular pom-pom maker. On screen, you'll see a basket with scissors, a pom-pom maker, and a couple of balls of yarn. This requires a different set of weaving skills. This photo is from a colleague's classroom, and in fact, when I was in the classroom once helping out, a child asked me to help with it, and I deferred to a more knowledgeable 5-year-old who understood the steps, because if you cut it at the wrong time or in the wrong place, it falls apart, and I hadn't had that lesson. So it gave me the opportunity to defer to the child to support another child. The point of the series at first is teaching a 5-year-old to sew a button. Maybe might seem a little too much, but when broken down into specific steps to master, it makes it accessible and organized for the child and encourages concentration and self-esteem. So we move to concentration now. In this slide, there's a photo of red, yellow, and green cylinders stacked on top of pink cubes that are graded on top of a graded set of rectangular prisms. Each set the child graded and then placed on top of the previous set. Although it seems like the child is now experimenting with those blue cylinders on their side, perhaps they're going to roll down the other graded prisms. The child concentrates to create this structure, and as an observer, I wonder what they're going to do next. I avoid that interruption. Remember, my role as an adult is not to intervene, but to allow it to unfold in the child. The conversation may come later, but during this time, I only want the child to be focused, and the child might begin the conversation with me. In The Absorbent Mind, Montessori wrote, "The first essential for the child's development is concentration. It lays the whole basis for his character and social behavior." To encourage concentration, I encourage you to pause before interrupting, commenting, or questioning. Give the child some space to stretch their focus and for you to observe. Development of coordination is another skill integrated into all the materials in the Montessori classroom. Of course, we saw lots of fine motor skills in the discussion of sewing, but we also see it here. On the left side, a child's hands are adjusting so finely green squares for a math material called Stamp Game. Some fine motor coordination and development of precision is at work, as well as a need for order. On the right is a child with the red rods. They're of varying length that are randomly placed on a rug. The child is ready to grade the lengths. The longest of the red rods is about the arm span of a 4-year-old. It takes coordination to carry them one at a time from the shelf. The direct skill taught in these lessons is not coordination. That's not the aim of it, but developing coordination is essential for its purpose. Montessori felt strongly about the importance of movement and the connection of the hand and the mind. There are many ways to integrate movement and the development of muscular memory into the classroom. And some examples are distance games. So I might place objects or sounds or those red rods across the room and then ask a child to bring me one longer one or two together. And the child has to keep track of my requests in their head while moving across the room. Of course, you can do that with sounds or numbers or lots of kinds of ideas. Walking on the line is another coordination activity, a line usually taped on the floor, maybe in chalk outside, that the child the 3-year-old might walk heel to toe, might be the most challenging for them. But then you can add a child maybe carrying a tray or a chair or a glass. Then put water in the glass, maybe a tray with a glass with water on it. Another challenge, of course, is carrying a bell, so that carrying the bell from the top and walking so carefully, it doesn't make a sound. Another technique or activity for control of movement is the silence game, where as a community, we invite the children to make silence as a group and listen. And each time we try and keep still a little bit longer. So take a moment to consider how you can focus on coordination with your classroom or with the children you work with. Montessori believed in providing precise language to children. So in this part, we're talking about language development. Along with the sensitive period for order, Montessori believed that they were in a sensitive period for language. Of course, this is widely accepted now, so we provide language that they're interested in and that we know that they learn language quickly. I knew someone who described this age period, each age period by grouping questions. So he called this the age of what is it and why. So fill that need. Montessori used this idea of a 3-period lesson to refer to a method of introducing vocabulary or sounds in all areas of the classroom. For example, on the slide, you'll see a photograph of pink card with a letter on it. And then there are some small objects on some of the letters. Those are objects that begin with those sounds. The first period, the adult would introduce the letters. It looks like this is j, and h, and have the child trace it because it's sandpaper. Then the next period, I would ask the child to show me each of those sounds. Or to put on their head, or different activities through that. And then the third period, I would check in and say, what is this? What sound is this? To see where the child is. That's a simple framework that Montessori teachers use to teach all kinds of sounds, numbers, and vocabulary. Along with the 3-period lesson, there are games, and many activities like this are played in many spaces. One is the photo on the slide. That's an I Spy game. There's a child sitting by a rug with a basket. And in the basket, there's a variety of small objects, along with some small objects outside of the basket. It looks like a bench, a crab, maybe some cards, a hat, a star. They can use this lesson frame to name the items. The child might play with a peer or a teacher. It might start with a description of something as opposed to beginning or ending sounds that might come later. And then the beginning sounds work can extend then into the classroom or other spaces, as well as storytelling. Other ways that language is integrated into the classroom is through vocabulary development and really building background knowledge as they begin to read. So since children learn quickly and ask what and why questions, we teach them by giving them precise language in the classroom. So they learn the parts of a tortoise or a bird, parts of a frog, just like specific names of dinosaurs or other things. In the fall, when children are seeing skeletons and decorations in the community, we might do a lesson on naming the bones, the parts of the skeleton, mandibles, phalanges, and cranium, and so on. One note about questions and conversations. From a Montessori perspective, I always want to balance that space with the developing concentration. So I avoid interrupting to extend concentration with an awareness of the importance of extending thinking, but I'm watching for the concentration first. In the same way, non-Montessorians may need to be aware of the child's need for developing concentration and pause before interrupting. Our final topic wraps back around to the preparation of the environment. Montessori felt that a child's classroom, or she called them children's house, should be a place of beauty, of structure and order, simple lines, natural materials, uncluttered shelves. So the photograph on the slide shows a example of this. There's a child sitting on the floor, leaning over material. In the background, there are wooden shelves with materials on them. You'll notice there aren't many items on the shelf. You will not see many things also on the walls in Montessori classrooms, and anything on the walls are at child height, not adults. This is the child space. The space is designed not to overwhelm or overstimulate the child, but build on that sense of order, where there are just enough materials and everything is complete. The structure and the placement of the items is to build on that sense of order premise, like the sewing lesson that would be on the shelf from simple to complex. As I mentioned, items are simple to abstract with everything complete and needed for the child. The materials are grounded in reality, including things that of work, so that things that appeal to the senses and also give the child the ability to take care of themselves, to clean up after themselves. So everything is child-sized. On this slide, you'll see a stand for holding child-sized tools, like a dustpan and brush, a broom, a mop, some dusters. I think there's a crumber there. This gives the child the ability to help clean up after themselves or help appear. Some suggestions, of course, are to keep an eye on simplicity, to make sure things are at child level, and to get to the height of the child when you design a space, and not have too many things out at one time. The Montessori classroom allows for freedom of movement as we continue on this environmental design. The child can choose where to sit. They can sit on the floor, at a table, any place in the space. They have a choice in the work that they do, as long as they've learned how to use it. They may spend as long as they'd like to explore the material, and since it is designed to encourage that concentration. In the social environment, Montessori classrooms are multi-aged or generational classroom, including a 3-year age grouping. So children from 2.5 or 3 through kindergarten are in this multi-age space. That allows for peer mentoring and support, so older or more experienced child can support a younger child. It also allows the teacher to be flexible with what they present to children of different ages. So a child who is 3 years old and can read can still continue on reading, and a child who's 5 years old and struggling to tell the difference between a number and letter, but has amazing fine motor skills, can also be working where they are in space or developmentally. The environment is designed to support the intellectual needs of the child, appealing to curiosity and to the including things like books in all areas of the classroom and the continuity of the curriculum. Just as a reminder, look for opportunities for child to develop independence. This is through the prepared environment. Look for opportunities for the child to be a part of the family or the community through purposeful work. Break things down into small steps in a modeled lesson, allowing space for conversation, conversation and movement. Provide a depth of language and vocabulary and give space for choice and movement. Add beauty, simplicity into spaces for the child. And first consider you in this relationship as the guide. So make sure you take time to observe and watch. On this slide, you'll see some recommended resources. The American Montessori Society's website is amshq.org. and the Association Montessori Internationale, AMIUSA.org, are two of the largest Montessori organizations in the country. They both have resources like videos and other Montessori resources for and videos for parents and educators. You can also feel free to contact me. My email is on the slide. It's PATSHEABARTON@gmail.com. Finally, for just some further reading, the quotes from this presentation are from Montessori's book, The Secret of Childhood, the 1966 edition from Fides Publishers, The Absorbent Mind from the 1995 edition from Owl Books, and then the photograph that was of Montessori is from the Montessori 150 org website. It's the Maria Montessori with Children number 20. I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing from any of you that might have any questions as you find out more about Montessori. I'm going to pass this over to Michelle.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Barton. That was incredible information. And as a Montessorian myself, I'm truly inspired again, as always. And I just truly appreciate the information that you shared with our viewers today. And I want to thank our viewers as well for attending this session today, and encourage you and invite you to choose another session with our UAGC Early Childhood Education Conference. Again, Dr. Barton, thank you so much for presenting to us today.
Thank you.